experiences. And this is coming from one research that we are doing in AgriNatura in Europe, together with one of my young colleagues, Anna Kutilova, who is working on this topic in AgriNatura. And this is why the presentation is made on behalf of the two of us, but unfortunately she's not here to share with me the presentation itself. A few words about AgriNatura, just for a presentation, as AgriNatura is a member of the group of institutions that are backing the PISAI project. We are an association of universities in Europe that share in common a certain interest in agricultural research for development, sustainable agriculture, and tropical agriculture, to say it short. There are 29 universities and research centers that have in Europe the same concern for those topics. And they are building an association together for addressing a number of challenges that are common to them. And indeed, several universities among this group of 29 have developed specific curricula and specific objectives with regard to building the capacities in sustainable agriculture for now between 10 to 15 years. And we think that there is enough materials now to take advantage from that to share on the lessons learned. And more particularly, I'm mentioning the experiences that we have at the University of Copenhagen. As Chutima said this morning, the colleague from the University of Copenhagen is not here to share with us, but she asked me to contribute to the discussion with their experience. They have developed a master in agricultural development since 2002, and this master in sustainable development has developed a number of core modules, compulsory modules, including one which is totally given on the field. Well, when I say totally given, half given on the field. And this is done in collaboration with several universities in the world, including Kasetsat University. So there is a part of the experience that can be brought from this collaboration between Kasetsat University and Copenhagen University in this master. The second example is the Master in Sustainable Development in Agriculture, which is a European Masters involving several universities in Europe, which I personally am coordinating, Agris Mundus. And we also have developed a number of modules on the field on which we can base the experience. And last but not least, BOKU, which is the University of Agriculture in Austria, in Vienna. They have a general master in agriculture, which also has developed another kind of experience of modules being developed on the field, because they also come to the conclusion that for this topic it is needed to have a part of the training being done directly with the farmers on the field. They do it differently. They do not make the same choices as Copenhagen or what we have in Agris Mundus. They choose to do that through summer courses. And they have developed a number of summer courses I will mention on this issue. So all these masters have developed some field courses. Comparison become possible between them from academic, scientific, and methodological points of view. AgriNatura is committed to build conversions on the main field based approach and capitalize on this. This is one of our programs of research on which we want to focus in the next years, so we are happy to contribute in the PISAI due to that. Okay, the outline, I'm going mostly to talk on two issues. The concept of sustainable agriculture, from what we see from the different experiences that we can review. It can be, or is it, some nice words for talking, because it corresponds to the sustainable development goals. So it's fancy to be talking about that, and institutions are very ready to hear priorities around these topics. So there is much of talking. Or is it a new way of doing business? And doing business for universities is producing graduates that correspond to the needs of the job market and the needs of the professionals afterwards. And second topic, if one of the conclusions of the first one is that this new way of doing business requires new ways of learning and new ways of teaching, then what is the specific roles of the courses that are given on the field, and what is the specific role of this interaction between the practical experience that the students have and the learning of capacities, acquiring capacities for sustainable agriculture. Okay. For those who will, because I have only 15 minutes, so I have to go very fast on this issue. But for those who are especially interested in, a scientific approach of learning about sustainable agriculture and role of learning on the field in a pedagogical approach, there has been a number of publications being done on that topic that we can share with those of you who are interested going forward. One is this publication that was published, a book that was published by Chiaka, based on one field module developed by us from Montpellier together with some Indonesian universities on one Indonesian field on smallholders farming systems, and that is available. Another one is a recent publication by the FSCC project that we mentioned this morning. The last summer course of this FSCC project was done in Java in Indonesia, and it was given, it was on sustainable agriculture, food security and climate change, and it was given during one week in the walls of the university, but also 1 week on the field together with the farmers. And there is a very comprehensive report about this summer course that is quite interesting also as a material. Last but not least, there are a number of publications in journals that have been published, especially by some of the representatives of the teams involved in the SLUs field course that I mentioned together between Kasetsat University and University of Copenhagen. But they have been also reproduced in other parts of the world. So there are especially guys from South Africa that have published several journal articles about this approach. And the keywords are interesting to note. Thinking out of the box is an important keyword. Problem-based, interdisciplinary, field-based courses is another one. Or clear the mind of preconceived ideas, get your hands dirty. All these are indicators of what is the orientation that those people think that the lessons can be taken from their experiences. Okay, sustainable agriculture. Drivers behind the search of new paradigms. If sustainable agriculture is going to be developed by universities, it's because there are new reasons, new paradigms for agricultural development that are involved, and I don't want to get into a lecture about that. The environment is changing rapidly, the policies, the market, the institutions, and because the changes are so rapid now, much more rapid than they used to be 20 or 30 years ago, the way we have to produce the minds of our graduates need to be different. This is the basic idea. The changes are very rapid, so the competences that are required from the graduates have to be different, because the knowledge that we are giving them when they are students is going to be maybe the knowledge that will be valid during 5 years of their professional activities. But after 5 years, it will require to be new knowledge. So being equipped with knowledge directly is much less important than it used to be. What is more important now is the capacity of the graduates to permanently, update their knowledge and change their capacities, modify their capacities according to the changes of the needs and to the changes of the overall scientific knowledge and capacities. Increasing importance of knowledge for change, because this knowledge is also increasing. It's clear that a graduate at the master level cannot know everything on all. It's just impossible. But he needs to have the minimum basis, and he needs to be trained on how to learn. So how to learn is more important than having the knowledge, because the knowledge is of a very limited duration, validity. Third point, increasing complexity of the problems that research and development institutions need help to resolve. There is no overall solution. I'm hearing this morning that we are talking of different models that could be spread everywhere. I'm not sure that this exists. Even in conventional agriculture, there is no agriculture that is valid everywhere. Every system has to be locally adapted to the local circumstances of the farming activities. So it's the same in sustainable agriculture or in alternative agriculture. The solution has to be created especially in each case, and the capacity to create and to respond to problems by solutions that are adapted to each specific case is the master skill, more than the knowledge itself. Okay. Finally, we are moving, or we have the feeling that we are moving from one model of innovation, which was rather simple, where the creation of technology was done by research. The adaptation and the transfer of technology was the task of the extension. And the farmers, the users at the end, they had to apply. Okay, when it is a conventional agriculture with breeding, you breed a high-yielding variety. If the variety is adapted, then the extension services will spread the extension of the use of the variety, and the farmers will use it at the end, and it works. But this model is now reaching a certain limit. It has been effective in certain circumstances, but we see, if we look to the progress of the technologies all over the world, that it is reaching a plateau in the current circumstances. And we're moving to a more complex approach of innovation, where the problems are complex problems instead of being simple problems that are addressed directly by research and down through the transfer and the extension to the farmers. We have to address complexity and complexity can be only addressed when at the central level you have a capacity of facilitating mutual learning of a community of stakeholders, which play different roles in the process of innovation. But nobody has a central role, and it is the global action of all the stakeholders together that can lead to innovation. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but this has a number of consequences over the capacities that those people who are in charge of facilitating this process, they have to master all those competences to be able to do that, which is more complex than what was previously the case when you either create the technology or transfer the technology, which was a rather simple task compared to what it is now, where you need to master all those capacities together. Okay, so when we pack that all together, there are different names, honestly, that integrate all those approaches together. It can be called sustainable agriculture, it can be called integrated natural resource management, it can be called doing business unusual. All those are different names given by different authors, different people, but they all refer to the same reality. The problems to address are complex and the solutions will not be simple. And the capacities to address that are also diverse and complex. Okay, another sorry. Another specific challenge behind sustainable agriculture is that the different kind of partners that have to be involved in the process of innovation, the institutions, are also getting much more complex than it used to be before. Before, or up to now, you had the research institutes, you had the development agencies, sometimes the NGOs, and of course the farmers all together, and those were the stakeholders that had to be connected with the work of promoting development at the grassroots level. This was fine, with all this setting, but as it was mentioned just before, when you want to replace technology with people at the heart of rural development, which I think is one of the principles of the sustainable agriculture approach, somehow this range of stakeholders becomes a little bit narrow. It also focuses only on production. It does not address environment, which is an important challenge for sustainability, and it does not so much address market and institutional issues. Therefore, there are a number of other kinds of institutions that have to be involved in sustainable agricultural development, like policy bodies, agribusiness, marketing institutions, banks or banking institutions, microcredits, consumers organizations, associations dealing with environment, etc., etc. So the number of interactions between institutions has also increased in parallel with the increase of complexity of the problem itself. Okay, this being said, maybe everybody will agree on those bases, but based on these principles, we see that the way we see sustainable development in agriculture or sustainable agriculture is different from two major other orientations that we see that exist among academic institutions. And for us, it represents something different, at least from which we have to make the difference. What are they? There is another approach that is the journalist vision, what I call the journalist vision. The journalist vision is when you consider that the problems are complex, and because they are complex, you only can remain superficial. So you identify the problem at the local level, but actually you do not have the capacity to deal with the problem and to find solutions to the problems. You are able to mention the problems, you are able to write a nice article in National Geographic, but you are not able to address and to find solutions to the problem. And you have a number of trainings at the master level, even at the PhD, which are on this principle, where you touch to all the kinds of problems that may exist in rural development, and there are so many that you remain only superficial to each of them, and you avoid to have to deal with finding some solutions. This is not what we promote. The other risk, or the other different orientation that sometimes is behind sustainable agriculture is what we call the promotion of alternative models of agriculture. And there is a big confusion there on our point of view, and I hope that this clarification can be achieved within our group. Otherwise, in the 3 years time of the project, I'm sure that we will have very big differences of opinion that will occur and some kind of dispute. The promotion of alternative model of agriculture is to think that there have been up to now a number of problems dealing with conventional agriculture, because conventional agriculture was not sustainable on the ecological point of view, because creating a number of ecological problems that could not be mastered, or was not sustainable on the economical point of view, because not considering a number of costs for the society that were that had to be supported by the society, but which were not included in the cost of the products themselves. And especially, I'm thinking of the environmental cost, of course, or not sustainable socially, because the model was useful only for one category of farmers, and mostly those who could take the risk on the economic point of view. So because there were problems, then some alternative models have been built. And some approaches in training which are presented as sustainable agriculture are mostly based on alternative technical models. And alternative technical models can be on different fields, but I'm mentioning here sustainable conservation agriculture, for example, or integrated agriculture. You know, these integrated agriculture models where you have the pond and the pig that is, you know, the manure is going to the pond, that where the fishes are being reared, and the fishes are being harvested, and then the part of the fish flour is going to feed the pig, and the pig are feeding the ponds, and so on and so on. That kind of model, very nice on the paper, is sometimes presented as models of sustainable agriculture. So, okay, good. This is not the way we consider the training needs in sustainable agriculture, because we consider that that there is no model that exists that can be valid everywhere. We consider that having a critical capacities to any model is central to the capacities of the students and of the graduates that should be produced by a training in sustainable agriculture. So being critical against those models as well as against the conventional agriculture is a key competence of those graduates, and that we should focus on producing the critical capacities rather than producing knowledge about specific modules that should be extended. Okay, we may have some more opportunities to discuss about that tomorrow when we look at some cases of those models, maybe, in the field visit. Okay, new ways of learning required to build the capacities in sustainable agriculture. If we have the objectives that I suggested just before, how to do and how to teach about that. I identify 3 levels of competences. The competences in hard system skills, the competences in higher level of disciplinary specialization, and the competences that will come here in soft skills. Hard system skills is what you can imagine as competences dealing with the different disciplines that have to be mobilized for helping with finding solutions to the problems that are identified. So if we do not want to stay at the level of the journalist approach, want to find solutions for the problems that are identified, then we need to have competences that are linked with the hard system skills. How are we going to give to the students in the master those hard system skills? Put disciplines in a dynamic system context. Dynamic system because the changes are so fast. Understand different disciplinary paradigms, that one student can be not only a good specialist in soil science in sustainable agriculture, but being a soil science specialist is also able to cooperate and to discuss with, representatives of the other disciplines to handle the complexity of the problems that cannot be limited in soil sciences most of the time. This is a question. Integrate the contribution of the different disciplines. Okay, soft system skills. These are especially important in the kind of work that we have seen, since there are so many actors and institutions that are involved for innovation in agriculture in that domain. The capacity to work in interdisciplinary teams, the interinstitutional partnerships, the question of the participation of the stakeholders and how to support the participation, how to process joint analysis and planning of activities, to integrate scientific and local knowledge, to organize collective action learning between all those stakeholders, and to negotiate and to manage the conflicts that can happen in the process of innovation in that case. All those are skills that would be required by sustainable agriculture specialists or sustainable agriculture graduates in the future. Finally, self-monitoring, evaluation, impact assessment also, communication and dialogue also. Okay, so altogether, there are three pillars of competences that seems to be required for that kind of profile. There are competences on skills, there are competences on knowledge, and there are competences on mindsets. The way the minds are formatted to be able to work in that. The question is that if you look to all those boxes that were in the previous slide, there are so many topics, so many skills that the graduate should have, that it's totally impossible that all those skills correspond to one course in the program. Totally impossible. The number of credits, 36 credits you said. I think that there are more than 18 boxes in the previous slide. So even if you had only 2 credits per slide, you couldn't have all those things in one program. So we need to do it differently. We cannot manage by addressing all those issues through specific courses. We need to have those issues represented as a way of doing our courses. It's another way of addressing the challenge, instead of taking those skills as separate challenges, which will be addressed, each of them by one specific course, is to say, no, we take much less courses, but we make those courses, we give those courses, we prepare those courses so that the way it is done will require the students to get those competences and to acquire those competences. You know? So this is a challenge when we are going to discuss the different modules that will be in the PSI program, is then to see how those modules should be organized so that they mobilize the capacities of the students in those different domains, whatever it is mindset, whatever it is knowledge, whatever it is the skills themselves. Okay. Also, one important lessons that we are taking from the various experiences that we have reviewed is about the role of the fieldwork. Everybody agrees that you cannot work on sustainable agriculture without having a specific interaction with the fields and with the farmers. This is not a question. This is not a point of discussion. Everybody easily agrees on that. This being said, if you scratch a little bit and if you look at how people see that relationship with the farmers, you see very, very, very different understanding of that relationship and very different approaches of organizing this relationship. The fieldwork can be considered as an opportunity for the students to exert his capacities on a practical way in an integrated manner. So the students are sent to the field to exert those capacities integratively, or it is an opportunity for the students to discover the needs of specific analytical needs that have to be taken into consideration in the academic courses. So one way is to say we send the students so that they practice. The other way is to say we send the students so that because they are together with the farmers, they will realize that they need some specific disciplinary, academic, scientific tools for, progressing and responding to the problems of the farmers. And on the pedagogical point of view, it's a very different organization behind. In the first approach, you organize so that the students exert what they have learned before, but they need to learn before. In the second approach, no, they do not need to learn before, they need to learn after. So you do not position the field work at the same moment in the curriculum. That's one point. Another point is that both approaches are opposed to another vision of the role of the field, which is, to say it short, the visit approach. In those two first approaches that I just mentioned, it's not a matter of going to the field for visiting a farmer that has a special model to present. Visit is nice, but in a visit, you just look at, you take the lessons from what you see, and you get back home with those lessons. Eventually, you try to promote, you try to extend afterwards. What is proposed in the two first is not to visit some specific cases, it's to go on the field, to exert directly, the students exert directly the capacities either to assess the problems on the field level or to undertake the analysis on the field about what they have learned in the disciplinary modules. So they are directly actors. When the visit, they are passive actors with regard to the learning. Okay, two last lessons that are taken from the cooperation that we have looked at is that the modules have to be long enough to allow active learning. So when I say long enough, I do not dare to say a precise number of days or weeks, but I know that it is a big issue in this audience for discussion. What we see is that the modules that have been developed when it is a visit approach, then it can be short. But if it is an active approach, the one of the two first approaches that I mentioned in the previous slides, then a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks is needed. I know that this is a point of discussion because if it is too long, the students can get bored. But if we have learning objectives that the students really accept actively, this requires time, and there is no way you can shorten that too much. Also, it can be also prepared. That may shorten the time being spent on the field itself, but however, there is a minimum duration. Okay, another question is, there is a curriculum, or there will be a curriculum. In the curriculum, there are a number of compulsory or mandatory modules that we mentioned, but there are also some elective modules. In a program, what is the role of the elective modules? What is the function of the elective modules? Why are these modules there in the program? One way of seeing the elective modules is to consider that they are, for the student, an opportunity to concentrate on learning what is necessary for his research project. It's what we call the concentration specialization strategy. All the students at the master level, they have different master topics for research, and because they are working on that topic, there is a need of following a number of elective modules that are necessary for undertaking properly that research topic. I'm working on, I don't know what, carbon in organic matter in the soil, in hydromorphic situations. I need to have some specific modules that I can take as elective in that domain to be able to correctly do my research. This is one way of seeing them. The other way is totally different. It is to say, I'm going to work in research on this topic, but when I am graduated, if I am working in sustainable agriculture, I will never work only on about the research topic that I have considered during my master. I will have to do much more things. And my employer is going to require that I do much larger than just this topic. So the role of the elective modules is not at all to help me to concentrate on my research, but rather to open the set of competences that I need to have, so that once I am graduated, even though I had a research topic on a special issue, which is necessary for research, because you cannot do research without concentrating on a topic. But however, beyond what is necessary to do this research, there is a set of competences that are large competences that should be shared by all the students and that are not linked with the research topic. And that is the role of the elective. I don't respond to the opposition, but at least the debate is open on this question. And I may have my own response about that, but it's something different. Okay. So, to come back on this issue of the role of the field work and the learning on the field, we have opposed three different categories of relationship with the field that may be distinguished between the different approaches. One is the visit, that I explained before. One at the other side is the active learning module, where opposed to the visit, the role of the field is to put the student in a situation where they will have to research by themselves and to discover, not to see what is prepared for them, but to discover by themselves. And in between, there are a number of field modules that have been developed under the general approach of rapid rural appraisal, where the students are going on the field, but they are going on a short moment, and one of the role of the field in that moment is, in that period, is not to allow them to do complete analysis of the situation, because they do not have the time for that, but at least that they interview the stakeholders present on the field, so that they can identify the problems that the stakeholders themselves can share. So it's not an analysis of the problems directly by the students. It's interviewing the actors and the stakeholders that work on the field to have their opinion about the problem. It's not exactly the same. Yeah.
Where is the time Lawrence and go to summer school field?
I would
Learning.
Yes, directly, yes.
And the one that you think will be like in DPM?
Well, let me be very precise. It's between that active learning and the rapid rural appraisal. But I think that in that approach, it was 1 week, 10 days on the field. The students didn't have completely the time to directly measure, the indicators on the field about the problem that they surveyed. They had to rely partly on the information that were given by the stakeholders themselves, the farmers, the extension officers, the all the stakeholders that were involved in the value chains, and that is something that is more on the rapid rural appraisal module thing. It's in between.
Is it okay when I comment for 1 or 2 minutes? The case that happened in Thailand is, in some circumstances, the team went into the field and did some assessments and proposed some recommendations. And then when they left, the farmers talked behind them. Well, the rich kids are gone. They are proposing solutions that's out of this world. Well, out of that, there are local possibilities to follow. So it's one of the big risks that we have seen. I think it happens a lot in Africa. Even with the big projects. The big project come in for 1 or 2 years, spend a lot of money, and then after they leave, everything's gone. And the risk for us is, if we do this for education purpose, the possibility for the development for the local people will be a lot reduced. But again, it's really good education exercise for the students, but I think we need to balance the impact to the farmers so that they would be happy to accept the next team and the next team year after year.
But these risks that you mentioned with the big projects coming with their big proposals, and that after they leave, nothing is left because the solutions were so far from the real situation of the farmers. This can be also a risk for the alternative agriculture promotion. You can come with conservation agriculture. You can come with your biogas plants and do some work on the field with some NGOs during 2 or 3 years. And after the 2 or 3 years, the biogas plants remain there and is no longer used. And the conservation agriculture is moved back to a traditional system. And that is what we see as many times, as often as we see failures in the big conventional projects. And so I think the risk for a group as our group here is that because we share in common the criticism of the main conventional system, we balance into the alternative promotion only, without developing the capacities which should be the capacities to critically analyze any model and to design a model that is specific to each solution, each context, each specific locations, and that would be the real capacity of a graduate in sustainable agriculture, from my point of view. Okay. Well, I don't want to I've spoken too much, so you will find that we will distribute the PowerPoint. But this is the way we have identified that in a process where the solution to a problem would be done together with the local stakeholders at the speed that the local stakeholders can really be, active promoters, active finders of the solution, rather than having a solution coming from the top and being delivered to them. There are different steps, and those steps have to be followed by the approach, and a graduate in sustainable agriculture should be able to facilitate any of those steps at any moment in his career. Okay, that requires a multi-stakeholders approach to solving complex problems. That requires guides interdisciplinary interdisciplinary and interinstitutional teams through the problem-solving processes. It requires a generic approach based on practical experience of teams, not individuals. I think that's important. Teams solving a wide variety of complex problems and integrating a broad range of more specific approaches. So the capacity to integrate is quite important rather than mastering each of the more specific approaches that are mentioned. There are some interaction curves between all those steps. Some examples of complex problems requiring collective actions that we took from the literature, just to see how the problem can be complex when you think of sustainable agriculture. How can growers in North Sumatra increase their share in the orange market in Singapore? So this requires agriculture, agronomy, because orange cultivation in North Sumatra is not something that is a given. It requires value chains and organization of the chain between Sumatra and Singapore. It requires economics. It requires probably plant protection against the different flies that are threatening the production of orange in North Sumatra. So all these issues should be considered at the same time. How can value adding create incentives for enhancing agrobiodiversity in home gardens in Nepal? How this is not specific to agriculture in Asia. We had one problem like the following one raised to one of our students. How can Dutch dairy farms on sandy soils remain economically viable under new environmental EU policies? This is a question also in sustainable agriculture. It's not because we are in Holland, where the dairy production is one of the most concentrated industry in the world, with a mean number of heads of cattle, of cows, being around 500 now, that it is out of the scope of sustainable agriculture. No, definitely it is in the scope. But we have to consider it, and we have to to build capacities that can address also that kind of question, and not only small farming with 1 hectare mixing coffee and rice and paddy cultivation. Okay, since all those issues and capacities are too numerous, too many for being addressed by different modules, as such, the only solution, as I mentioned before, is that the various modules that we may have in the curriculum of a Master in Sustainable Agriculture is that all these approaches are considered within each of the modules, in the way of delivering the modules. So this is the question that is raised. How the knowledge acquisition in those different modules, and I mentioned here what I think might be the topics of the modules that will be delivered or that will be prepared under the PSI program, that the knowledge acquisition within those modules allow to build the capacities to handle these different steps. So each of the modules should be a kind of case studies on the field to build a response to a local problem in the domain that is the topic of the modules, and finishing by sharing experiences on how to respond to this problem and making the evaluation of the possible solutions also. So that at the end, the student can be graduated. Okay. So sorry for having been a little bit long, but those who are especially interested in that, you can join the group that we have formed for discussing those issues together with a number of colleagues in AgriNatura. We will be happy to share the documents and the reflection that we have on this topic.